I call this session budget travel, but it's really traveling on a budget, if you want to say, as opposed to budget travel. But interchangeably, you could say budget travel or traveling on a budget. Um, because pretty much sometimes when you are traveling on a budget doesn't necessarily mean that you are attempting to travel as cheap as you possibly can. It just means that you want to set a specific budget and you want to stay within your budget, and not necessarily that you're trying to find all the cheap hacks or whatever, cheap accommodation, etc., etc. So I'd say budget travel or traveling on a budget. I will also start by saying that travel hacks, I don't really believe that there are any such thing as travel hacks. What it is really about understanding how travel works and using your credit cards, etc., to be able to leverage to enjoy those type of benefits or advantages. I know sometimes, especially from a lot of US commentaries, you hear all of this about travel hacks. And when you really dig into what they're really doing, it is that they're just taking out a bunch of credit cards in their names, and they're able to secure points which they can redeem for airplane miles, etc., for these travel itineraries, whether they're accommodations or airline tickets or whatever. And then they're accumulating those, and that's what they're calling a travel hack. But basically what it is that when you open a new credit card, you get, let's say, 50,000 miles, and they're opening 3, 6 credit cards in 1 year just to get the miles and moving it from one card to the next and moving balances and all that kind of stuff. For the person who can keep in planning with all of that, the ones who can't will completely run themselves in trouble at some point in time. And as I said, this is a lot of what the US is deeming to be travel hacks or whatever. It don't really work in the Caribbean, because you don't just be able to take out credit cards and be able to have those kind of advantages. So when I look into what I don't consider these to be travel hacks, but it's just understanding how the travel industry and some of the accommodation works and fitting in what's best for you. So one of the things that you always want to avoid, especially when it comes to travel and how people end up spending a lot more money in travel, is either because they've not researched the itinerary properly, don't have proper planning, or all the additional costs that come into play. And it's really, as I said, from not understanding either what they're signing into or how things work, or not planning properly. And then they spend a bunch of excess monies on a trip then that they didn't necessarily anticipate that they were going to need to spend. Things like delays, etc. You should be able to counter those by having insurance. There are some points in time when the airlines will say to you it was an act of God, and they will leave you stranded somewhere. It happens. But for general delays or for accidents, or if it was a circumstance where you can't fly for some reason, family emergency, health emergency, or whatever, that's why you have insurance to cover those type of scenarios. I'll come back to that a little bit later. So some of the things, the areas that you end up spending money that you didn't anticipate, sometimes you may book the wrong dates. And how you may end up booking the wrong dates is that sometimes you have like overnight, you may have an overnight flight or something like that. And in these overnight flights, you have to make certain that when you're booking a hotel that you are booking the correct night. And it happens to the best of us, whether even seasonal travelers. Sometimes it does happen where you go ahead and you book a hotel room and you booked it to the wrong night. Also, if it has a case where you booked a hotel room and your flight is scheduled to enter, like say after 12 o'clock, then you need to notify the hotel that you are going to be a late check-in. Hotel booking systems trip at 12 o'clock, and if you've not checked in at 12 o'clock, the system deem you to be a no-show. Causes all sorts of drama. So if you are going to be getting to your destination at a late hour, let the hotel know that you are a late check-in, which means that you'll be coming in with the night auditor or whatever, so that they know not to no-show. They'll put a no-show on the booking, and you're able then to secure your booking when you get there. Other things that you end up paying for, like extra hotel bookings, rooms. Sometimes you book a room, don't realize that the room does not include taxes, or it doesn't include service charge. And then when you see those numbers add on, you're quite shocked, because sometimes it's as much as $15 to $30 per night, per room. And things like excess baggage. I don't know why we're still talking about excess baggage, because at this point in time, everybody needs to have a luggage scale. If you don't have a luggage scale, then yeah, that's actually even tacky now. So excess baggage shouldn't even be a thing of we shouldn't be dealing with excess baggage right now. No, everybody needs a luggage scale. So how do we go about with budget travel, traveling on a budget? We start by setting a budget. And everything I say or everything I do will always come back to a budget. You need a budget in life. You need to have everything budgeted. Now, when you're starting to do your budget, I'm going to go through the categories that you would include in your budget and different scenarios of what you need to look for or how to gain this information, etc. So one of the first categories would be based on your location. Once you've chosen a location or you have an idea of where you want to go, or you're maybe now researching the trip and you're looking for ideas and you say, okay, maybe I want to go to X place or X place, but you haven't decided yet. So, but once you've narrowed down those ideas of where you want to go, you have to start with your research. And the things that you're looking for is how much it costs to travel in this particular country a day. And these are all things that when you Google, somebody will tell you how much it costs. It doesn't matter which country in the world that you want, you will be able to find this information on Google. There are lots of backpackers, there are lots of travelers who give all this type of information. And also there's these statistic type websites. I may have the name wrong, but I think there's one called Numiko or something like that. And it gives you the standard of living or the cost of living actually in all the countries in the world. And these are different areas in which you can find out about how much stuff costs in these particular countries or locations that you are choosing. So you want to know how much it costs to travel a day. If you're eating out, if you're going to eat all three of your meals out, snacks, how much that is per person, transport, you need to decide whether you're going to take a taxi, Uber, train, whether you're going to rent a car. And this is the type of research, once you've had your location, that you can go in and start to put that type of information in your budget. Accommodation, you need to decide whether you want it to be a luxury holiday, mid-range, or lower range. There are persons who travel at one level all the time. There are some persons who may be a birthday or whatever, and they say, no, I want a luxury trip. If you want a luxury trip, then you need to research how much the hotels and those kind of things are going to cost you. Or if it is a case where you want to go to a specific location and you're like, okay, I'm just not trying to pay too much for a hotel room or whatever, you just need to decide before you set off or before you start to finalize your numbers, what type of accommodation you are after. Amenities, as I said before, make certain that when you do the dollar value, that it does include the different additional service charge, or also charges per room, because sometimes there's an additional charge for the cleaning of rooms that's not always in the initial cost when you may see it. So you just got to make certain that you read the fine print with those things. Activities, what type of activities do you plan to do? Fun activities, dining out. Even if you're going on a trip and you decide, okay, well, I want to dine out, you can choose how many times you want to dine out tonight, or you can decide whether, like on this particular night or these two particular nights, I want to do something a bit fancier. So then you research like how much this particular restaurant would cost and include that in your budget. If you're going to do day trips, activities, amusement parks, or whatever, you need to make certain that you know exactly how much those things cost. Your budget also needs to include costs for miscellaneous expenses like souvenirs, toiletries, and water. And yes, I add water in between souvenirs and toiletries, because water in some of these countries, especially when you're buying it from like attractions and stuff like that, it costs a whole lot of money. If you're going on a trip where it is for a shopping trip or is a trip that includes shopping, now I would also suggest that it's broken out by category. And let's say you were leaving Barbados and going to Miami and you wanted to do a shopping trip. Before you left, you should know, I'm going to buy appliances, I'm going to buy school clothing, I'm going to buy Christmas stuff, I'm going to buy household stuff, I'm going to buy whatever. And you need to have each category of these expenses broken out and how much money you've allocated to them. So if you're going to buy appliances, then you know that you're buying appliances and you said you've categorized, let's say $5,000 for that, then you know that that is your budget and you need to be able to stick to your budget. There are many persons who leave every year, go overseas, say they're going to shop, whatever. Day two, they run out of money. Day four, they're asking somebody to wire this money, put this on a credit card, all sorts of drama. And again, if it is that you're going for a legitimate shopping trip, and you have an idea of what you're going to buy, let's say you're going to furnish a house or whatever, then any store that you're going to purchase from, these stores all have websites, and you can go onto the website and you can determine how much money you're going to spend, or what items you're looking for, that you can put together a meaningful budget. At this time, I would also say that make certain that that overall budget for your shopping ties back into your monthly or budgeting, or your yearly budget, overall. And that is, all your travel should be already included in your main budget. So let's say at the beginning of the year, you know you want to go overseas. You don't wait until March or April and say, oh, I'm going to London for my holiday. At the beginning of January or whenever, even the year before, you should already know, because it depends on how long it's going to take you to save the money. You should already know, well, next year or this year, I'm going to London. That is my intention. So when you do your budget for the year, you already have your travel amount allocated. And you don't have to have the finer details at that point in time, but you need to make certain that you have it in your overall budget. So getting into the meat of the different tips and tricks, as I would call them, and not necessarily travel hacks. I'm going to go down the same list of categories, and I'll give just a few scenarios or different things that you can do to try to combat costs, or how you find the best costs, and stuff like that. So as it comes to the airplane tickets, now there are a couple of things. Airplane booking systems usually trip at some point in time every day. I know many years ago, layout only used to be 7 o'clock at night. Somebody taught me that a long time ago. And it wasn't even about the cost of the flight. It was that we were trying to get into St. Lucia for St. Lucia Jazz that year, and there was no flights where we could get back out the Monday, or I could get back out. They had already had a flight. And that person then said to me, oh, you know, the system trips at 7. I was like, no, I didn't know that. So at 7 o'clock, the system trips. So if there are any flights that persons had holding, and a lot of the airlines will let you hold a flight for 24 hours, or travel agents can actually hold them for much longer than that. But when the system trips, if these flights are not paid for, people don't want them and they release them or whatever, then they become available. So sometimes that's how you can snatch a flight on a flight that's already full, not necessarily in terms of price, because at that point you're already paying at the high price, but you can probably snag a flight that was already full. Every system and every airline has a different time for when the system trips. Years ago, I was trying to get into Vegas, and it was for a conference, and it was pure chaos. I think I discovered that one of the airlines I was trying to use, that their system tripped at 12 o'clock. At the time, I was in Barbados, but it was not 12 o'clock Barbados time. It was an hour difference. So that's also something then that I discovered then from just constantly checking and realizing, what time the system trips. So all the systems do trip at some point in time. It's just that you don't necessarily know the time unless you know the time. But that's just something that you can look for and monitor in terms of if you're trying to snag a flight and there's none available, or other options. Of course, booking in advance for an airline ticket is where the whole key is. The way airline booking systems work and their pricing system works is that when you first go on, for the first how much ever of their seats, they have at one price range. Once X amount of capacity on the airplane is filled, then you go to the next level, and you go to the next level, etc., etc. So of course, booking early is the advantage. Sometimes how you can play this and to find out some of this information, booking systems are usually open up to maybe as much as 6 months or so in advance. So if you went onto a system, let's say now, well, it's COVID, but in normal times, and you look for a flight, let's say 5 months down the road, and you see the type of cost that flight costs, then you will get an understanding of what is the minimum or the basic for a seat on this particular flight. And that gives you an idea then of what is the cheapest rate that you could possibly get a flight from that destination to the next destination. And then you can be able to work from there to realize, well, okay, if I see a flight at $350 here, then I know that that's where their flight starts. So I know $350 is a really good price. When I see it at 4, or I see it at 5 or 6, then no, that may not be the best price for this, because I'm booking too late, etc. So these are things that you can keep in the back of your mind, and when you're starting to book, make certain that you look for these things. Booking advances is always going to be an advantage. If you have group bookings and you have a group, like a large group, you can actually approach the airline for a discount. To get a cheaper rate, per person, etc. Of course, there's a minimum in which they will tell you that you need to come with, but it is possible to do that as well. Travel is always cheaper during the week. Wednesdays is where the little sweet spot used to be a while, And bear in mind that some of this stuff is going to change after COVID, or some may change during COVID, and we'll go back to the drawing board and see exactly what's working. But generally, weekend travel, especially on Fridays, is when everything starts to jack up in terms of pricing. If you're trying to move from your destination, Friday is possibly going to be the more expensive day, especially for people who want to just pop up for the weekend. Wednesday is usually the sweet spot. You're usually going to get a cheaper flight on Wednesday, because sometimes when people do weekends, they do like a weekend, maybe Friday to Sunday or Friday to Monday. Tuesday then is that little midday week, that day that lags between the two. Wednesday is typical the sweet spot. Thursday is a day, if you're going to do a 4-day weekend, you may leave on Thursday as opposed to Friday. So again, when you go onto the websites, play around with the dates and see how you can snag a cheaper flight. And of course, this is when you're more flexible. The whole thing about travel is that the more flexible you are, the better pricing you are going to be able to come up with. In terms of accommodation, now if you're looking for accommodation on booking sites, there are many sites that actually do comparisons for you. So as opposed to just going on, let's say on Expedia, you can go on Expedia, and then there are a couple of other ones that you can get those to run in the background, and they will go ahead and run maybe like 3 or 4 different sites of their sites, and they will come up with a pricing for you. There was a point in time where there was a whole bunch of benefits in terms of accommodations with these booking sites. I think in the early days when they first came out, especially Expedia, I've gotten some really great deals from Expedia. Like I'm talking like way back in the day though, like maybe over 10 years ago, where you can snag 4-star, 5-star hotels for the price that you would pay for a 2-star hotel. Back then they would also do a lot of these hotel specials, where like hotel special of the day. They actually still do that, where it's a hotel special of the day. It is not as fantastic as it used to be years ago, but in some cases it is still fairly decent. So example, there's a hotel that would normally book, let's say at $75 or $80 a night, and if that is the hotel for the day, you may be able to snag it at maybe $60 or less. And yeah, these numbers are fairly low. Hotel rooms aren't that kind of price these days, but you get the idea of how you can, go about. So again, it's more about research and looking for what you want. And there are some hotels that will never come as the hotel of the day, and there are some hotels which are actually fancy, luxury-ish type hotels that will become part of the hotel of the day, and you can get a good deal there. They also used to do secret hotels. I don't know if that one is still being done, where you would not be given the hotel or the address for the hotel, but they would pretty much say to you, they would sell it to you by saying, this hotel is a city hotel, it's a 4-star hotel, and it has XY amenities, blah 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 blah. And they will offer you, let's say, a rate of $70, and they will tell you, oh, it's a 40% base of the rate, but they will not tell you what the hotel is. So basically, until you have actually booked it, you actually don't know what the hotel is. It's like buying a pig in a bag. I did that once and I got lucky, but it was a long time ago. I ended up being at the #1 hotel in Manchester at that point in time. And the reason why I booked it is because I was booking so late. There weren't really many options in Manchester of decent accommodations. And I just decided, well, I'm just going to wing it and see what happens. I haven't done that in a very long time. So I don't know if you're still getting as nice a deals or whatever. But that's another thing that they do for like secret hotels, and you can get some good decent hotels like that as well too. Booking sites also, and I know especially for the Expedia and those, sometimes they block off rooms in a particular hotel, so they have deals with some hotels. So let's say the hotel is a 200-bed hotel, the Expedia would have an exclusive deal with the hotel where they would have, let's say, 30 or 40 of these rooms that they manage directly. The hotel don't manage these rooms at all. Expedia pretty much have blocked off these rooms. They're theirs. They market them, they sell them, they collect the monies and everything like that. And there are a lot of hotels that have these type of deals with a bunch of different tour operators. Now, in some cases, you'll be able to get a hotel room that is cheaper than the hotel rooms being offered on maybe that same hotel's website, or elsewhere, and that's because of the exclusive deal with Expedia or whoever. But just bear in mind that sometimes these rooms are not great. Sometimes the reason why they have them at a reduced price and they've given them off as blocks like that are because that there are, let's say, ground floor rooms in a city hotel. Nobody really wants ground floor rooms in a city hotel because there's no proper view. There's noise from the road and whatever. So that's how they're able to offer them at the same rate. But at the same time, depending on what your trip is for, if you literally want a hotel room to sleep in, these rooms are good enough for rooms to just sleep in. If you are after a more luxury type stay, then they may not be your choice. And these are different things then that you should really start to understand, that sometimes when you see a hotel room at a particular price, it's not always that when you get into that hotel, because you may see a hotel and you'll be like, oh, this hotel real nice. And then when you get into that room, you're like, this isn't quite what I thought it was going to be. And that is that because the room was actually at that price is because it was one of those type of rooms. Sometimes when hotels have, and a lot of it is in city hotels, when hotels have renovations in their hotels, they sometimes do this because these rooms are not the rooms that are what we should say saleable during this time of construction or whatever. So they may go ahead and do that. Or in some cases, it may be part of the hotel that's not yet renovated. So these are things that you just want to sometimes keep in mind. And in this case, this is where you start to read. And this is why I keep saying research. Because you really shouldn't book a room unless you've gone and you've read the reviews. No, you take reviews with a grain of salt. People will complain if they see a line of ants. That's the truth. They come to the Caribbean and they don't expect to see ants. So you take what you read with a grain of salt, but there are some things that are definitely like red flags. So there are some things that when you see a review on whatever about a particular hotel and you see that that's a red flag or something that bothers you, like cold water bothers me. I don't care how fancy the hotel is or what the price is. If I read the reviews and the reviews talk about the fact that the hotel runs out of cold water, runs out of hot water, it's a no for me. I just move on. So you have to decide, and you can look at the reviews and make certain that you're seeing what's happening. Because if it's a case where the hotel is under renovation, they should tell you that they're under renovation, but sometimes it slips. But if it's a case like that, then people are going to be talking about the fact that they booked this hotel and it is under renovations and they didn't say anything, etc. So make certain that you read the reviews as well. Use different methods for searching. I say this for airlines as well, but more so for accommodation. And that is, use your tablet, use your desktop, use your phone. There are specific deals that sometimes are put out for specific categories. So you may see a deal that's being offered on mobile telephone, and you may not see that deal when you are logging on your desktop. So when you're searching and researching and you're trying to decide if there are hotels and this stuff, make certain that you are using different modes and picking up different price ranges or different pricing if there are different prices out there. Also remember that all these sites now track you with cookies. So if you are looking for a flight and you've been on, or you're looking for accommodation and you've been on looking and searching for a while, I suggest that you go and delete all the cookies from your computer at some point in time and start again. Yeah. Other options, of course, in terms of accommodation, there's always Airbnbs, there are always hostels as well. I know a lot of Caribbean people don't know much about hostels, and they get a bad review. For persons who've never stayed in hostels and don't know, I've stayed in hostels myself many times all over the world. I will also say that 10 years ago when I did my round the world trip, I stayed in hostels. The hostels in Asia were far better than 3-star hotels in the Caribbean. At the time when many hotels in the Caribbean and even in North America didn't understand the concept that internet was nothing to pay for, or all the hostels in Asia were literally giving you free Wi-Fi, free breakfast, which includes a lot of fruit and stuff like that, and just the quality of the accommodations were far superior. So if you are looking into things, especially if you're looking for long-term travel and you see something pop up and it looks like a hostel, don't let anybody tell you about not staying in a hostel, blah blah blah. People who talk about hostels are people who've never experienced hostels. Also, if you are a solo traveler, I've done pretty much most of my travel as a solo person, a hostel is a very good place to actually meet other travelers that you can actually go out on day trips with and stuff like that. And there's always somebody to help you in terms of how to get to this place, or what's the best savings in terms of if you wanted to move from one location to the next, etc. And those are the places that you will get all of that type of information. Also, when you stay in hostels, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to stay in a room with strangers. You can actually book a hostel out for yourself. I've done that before. If the hostel has, let's say 3 beds or 4 beds per the room, you can decide that you're going to pay for all the rooms, all the beds. You can do that. And there are also hostels that actually do have bedrooms, like 1 bedrooms, and you're not sharing, etc. I've done a lot of those as well too, because you get the hostel environment in terms of meeting persons and, you know, just the lifestyle of being in a hostel. But at the same time, then you still get your privacy, especially if you're over a certain age. Because if you're a certain age, then yeah, hostels start to get, there are hostels that are party hostels. So again, you need to be able to read the reviews and make certain that you're staying in the kind of accommodation that works for what you want. Airbnb, I know a lot of people like Airbnb. I will admit personally, I am not an Airbnb fan, but Airbnb is very popular. One of the things I will say about Airbnb is that a lot of times it tends to be cheaper because they are in locations that are extremely far from the city. They're far from activities, etc. The places that are, the Airbnb places that are close to the cities and the action, etc., they go very fast, or they're almost as pricey as a hotel room. A lot of times when you see that Airbnb price and you look at it and you're like, wow, this looks really good, then it is because it's far out. And in terms of making certain that you're staying within your budget and stuff like that, one of the things that you will want to do is make certain that you are Googling the locations of these Airbnb and any hotel that you decide to stay at. That's what Google is there for. That's what Google Maps is there for. Go in, put in the address, see exactly where it is, decide that where you want to stay. So let's say you're going to Paris, you pick up a hotel and you say, okay, this hotel looks good, the accommodation looks good, it looks within my pricing, I like it, etc., etc. Reviews look decent. Go to Google Maps, put it in, see how far it is from the Eiffel Tower, because you want to go see the Eiffel Tower. You don't want a case then where you realize that you need a taxi that takes an hour, or you need to hop on 2 or 3 trains that you're now trying to figure out, or whatever the scenario is, in order then to get to these locations. It could be a case where you decide that you are willing to do that, like to take the amount of time to travel, but you don't want this to be a case where you have arrived on the spot and now realize that you are staying at an Airbnb or some other type of even hotel, that it was a really good price and you didn't look past the price, and now you're realizing we're spending so much money just to be able to get in the city every day. We're spending so much money just to get to travel. And sometimes I know a lot when persons go to like Disney World and whatever, this is something that comes up a lot in terms of the closer you stay, the hotel accommodation is just so ridiculous. But the further out you stay, you're going to spend more money on travel. So you want to be able to look at those scenarios and balance it. Look into things about whether or not the accommodation is offering breakfast. If you are there for a number of days, you have to feed yourself for 3 meals. If the hotel is going to offer you breakfast or the bed and breakfast, some type of breakfast and whatever, that may be one less cost that you have for that particular day. So that's just something that, all of those are things that when you start to look into the different amenities of what they are offering, to determine which one is really the best price. I think before I touched on the fact about insurance, especially sometimes when you're booking way in advance, you know, to secure or to lock in at good pricing, then make certain that you book the insurance as well. Sometimes people look at it and it's like, oh, that's another added cost and I don't want to spend that added cost or whatever. I don't think that I've really seen, I mean, I've had travel insurance for a whole year and stuff like that. And in order to do a round the world trip, you actually need a different type of insurance. Regular travel insurance doesn't work for that. But just for one trip, so like even when I was traveling a lot between Barbados and St. Lucia for work, you would pay an extra $9 or $10 for the insurance. And there are many persons who are like, oh, the insurance is such a rip-off and whatever. Insurance is one of these things that it's better to have it and not need it than need it and not have it. A former boss of mine said that. And it's true. So you may look at the $10 and you don't want to pay the extra $10 or whatever, but then something happened and you lose a flight for $300 US, $900 US or whatever. And a lot of these flights, because of when you're able to book in an early rate or stuff like that, if you read the fine print, there are a lot of a lot of airline tickets these days that are claiming that they're non-refundable. And these are things that you just want to make certain that you're securing your trip the same way that you secure your contents to your house or whatever, the same way. If you're having like a big family trip and you book this in advance or whatever, something may pop up. Somebody may get sick right before the trip and whatever. And the difference between having that travel insurance that you've paid, let's say $25 for the whole trip for the family, the difference between that may be losing $3,000. And yeah, it's a no-brainer. Activities. So when you get to your location, what are you going to do? Is, not all trips are shopping trips. And even in terms of looking for activities to do, these are things that you may start to research online while you are looking for while you're researching for your trip. So once you have your location established, and then you start to look for your airplane tickets, you start to look for your accommodation, you start to look for your activities, and not necessarily in that order, because you may actually be going to a specific location because of the activities. So the activities actually can come into play even before you start to look for your plane ticket. So what are you going to do when you get there? The things that you are hoping to think. And again, you want to research these long in advance before you arrive, because you want to know exactly how much money does it cost. You don't just show up at Disney World and then realize, okay, I want to go to Epcot Center and I want to go here, I want to go there, I want to go to Busch Gardens. Ooh, you see the price. Like, no, you should already know these things and already know that when you get there, you're going to Busch Gardens, but you're not going to whatever the new one name. You're going to Epcot Center, but you're not going to that other one, because you know within the budget that you set, these are the activities that you want to do. And sometimes when you book, especially if you book on Expedia, there'll be a whole bunch of activities that pop up. They'll start sending you all sorts of messages about rental cars and stuff like that, whatever. Stay calm. A lot of these packages that are sold by the hotels or the agents or whatever, they are going to be more pricey than your regular packages on the ground. And it's obvious because people need to make commissions. I mean, they're selling these packages, so they need to make something for themselves as well. So chances are you are able to buy into some of these packages on the ground for a lot cheaper. But at the same time, if you're traveling in peak time, and let's say you're going to Disney World, you may want to make certain that you secure your tickets, not necessarily through a travel agent, but you can buy them directly yourself. So then these are things that you need to make certain that you're thinking about, whether or not it's something that you need to have sorted before you leave, or if it's something that you are prepared to buy a ticket on the ground. For example, Vegas, I was going to Grand Canyon. There are many persons who sell you all these different tours, and everybody shouting at you on the street trying to sell you these tours, etc., etc. You can actually book that same tour online yourself for at least $20 cheaper, or $25. And sometimes it works out to even more money, because persons who book theirs like through the hotel pay a lot of money. Now, this is a trick. Regardless of whether you booked it from the person on the street, booked it at your hotel, went online like me, and booked yours and followed the instructions for what they said to do, whatever, everyone ends up on the same coach. Some persons are picked up directly from their hotel. Some persons have to make their way to a particular spot and they're picked up from a shuttle. But when they pick you up from wherever these locations are, they bring you to one central location and they put all of you on the same coach. Some places will have, because of the amount of persons they have, so maybe all these persons from this specific hotel get onto a specific coach. I don't know if there's a pecking order or how they put you onto a coach, but we all ended up in the same place. So these are things that when you understand those, then you just don't overpay for no reason. At the same time, let me also say that if you are booking in advance, or you're attempting to book it in advance, make certain that you're using like basic common sense. There are a lot of websites that are set up that are nothing more than scams. You don't want to think that you're booking something online before you get there. And I don't really suggest booking, well, I personally don't do it, booking activities before you get there, as again, unless it's a case where maybe it's like a Disney World, because that's crazy. But outside of that, I'm not a fan of doing that, because a lot of things may happen. You may get there on a particular day, it may be an activity you wanted to do, but the rain is falling and you're like, nah, this is not something I want to do if the rain is falling. But unfortunately, because you booked so far in advance, then you get there. And I will tell you, if you book something way in advance online and you pay double for what, and when you get there, you're going to feel salty. You're going to feel salty about the fact that you've paid double to what the price really is when you get in the location. And you don't want to hand over your money online or whatever to companies that you don't know if they're reputable companies. And you just want to make certain that you're not putting your money in scammers' hands. Once you have your locations and you know exactly the type of activities you want, you can also look for Groupons in these particular destinations. So let's say you wanted to go to New York, you can go on and look for Google Groupons for New York or whatever, and even like some fancy restaurants and stuff will pop up, and you just put in like the dates when you're going to be there, and there are all sorts of different activities, whether even sometimes to go to the spa. You can decide, well, yeah, like this, in the time that I'm here, these are the type of Groupons that are on, and you can snag something for a really nice thing. Groupons are not just for people who live in the cities. Groupons are definitely for people who travel as well. Yeah, you can definitely get some good deals as well if you are willing to do that.